Hello everybody, we are back home. There you
We
go,
are back
episode
home.
Something of the Strongfit Podcast, 195, something like that.
Four?
Back in Rio, before we move to the south to Florianopolis in 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
we are quite happy to be here.
I'm very happy to be back
2
home.
weeks in Europe. It was
It was fun.
It was fun.
We
It was
spent
fun.
time
So
with family. It was cool.
we're in Amsterdam and it's 15, 16 degrees.
Yeah.
We got very lucky. It was like sunny for 2 weeks.
So nice.
And then within 36 hours, it snowed.
That's
Like,
Holland for you.
that's Holland for you right there. It was like super sunny. We were walking in shorts, t-shirts, like, oh, this is cool. Like we got here. And literally, by the next morning, it's blanketed with snow, the whole city.
Yeah.
Amsterdam, baby.
yeah.
Amsterdam. Yeah, it's crazy.
Holland. But
Anyway.
how did you like the seminars and the Coaches Week?
I liked
we
it a
did
lot.
back to
Right.
we did seminar Belgium into Coaches Week Belgium into driving to Holland, seminar
Amsterdam and Coaches Week. Doing a Coaches Week in French is the most exhausting thing I've done in a long time.
Right.
Like I cannot find my words in French for all the Strongfit stuff. It's so hard.
I completely understand.
Yeah, so back to back is hard. Like because we finished Coaches Week on Thursday, Friday. We drove Thursday night. We got Friday, but we have to do a podcast. Stuff like that.
I
and
drive to
then
Amsterdam and Julia had a few near-death experiences. So
yeah,
that
she
didn't
almost
help.
killed us like 3 times while I'm on the
Didn't
phone with
help.
Yaya, who's begging her not to kill me. Someone has to put the food on the table. It was a cool experience. I like the seminar a lot because we did a lot more movement and stuff like that,
That's really cool.
which made me very happy because the practical aspect I think is working far better, so that people have something to use when they go back to the gym on Monday. It was very good. We covered the deadlift, we covered the press, a bunch of stuff. During Coaches Week, I covered the deadlift, the squat, and the press, as much as assessments and things like that. But for me, like the business is assessing, coaching, programming. That's just the pillars of the business. So that's what we did. So I cover on the seminar and more in depth doing Coaches Week. But I was like the one in Amsterdam, for example, it was cool to show them the strict press, which I think is a very underrated exercise that people do not know how to do. I might do a video on that.
You should.
Because
You should.
this is like an old school exercise from back to the 1820s, back to the old strongman days, and it's a very valid one. They even had it. So we had the strict press that we use as assistance work, and that one is done horribly, where the people just do more like a front delt into the trap exercise than they do an actual strict press. But there's also the Olympic press that they used to have in the Olympics until I think 64 or something like that. That is another exercise where you actually get away from the bar in order to press it, which there's a concept there toward pressing that I think people are missing, that I believe is very, very important. So we might do some videos on it, stuff like that. I'm going to introduce it way more at the seminar, I think, because this is a great exercise that people are missing completely.
And transfers to everything.
Yeah,
Which I
for the
find very,
it's
very
a squat
cool.
of the upper body, really, more than the push press is great, but I think it's a bit like doing keeping pull-ups. I think before we push press, we need to learn to strict press.
Yeah. I agree.
Because you can learn to push press and not strict press, but if you learn to strict press correctly, it'll transfer to your push press. So this is why you see some Olympic weightlifters that can put, 220 kilo overhead, they can strict press 90. That might be great for Olympic weightlifting because they don't need to, but it means there's a number.
From an arch perspective.
It's a bad idea. Like it's hyper specialization. There's always a price to pay. Just because they can do it doesn't mean you can. So anyway. So with stuff like that, I was very happy about the seminar.
I really liked the Coaches Week in Belgium I was very impressed with the gym and how the
Jack,
coaches were and I thought it was really cool to see them, and I like the gym, the environment there a lot. The Coaches Week in Amsterdam we did in our, now not our gym anymore, but...
Well, because we closed the gym back in Amsterdam, yeah.
But yeah, so that was not like seeing a gym, but I thought Jack's gym was really cool.
Yeah.
Cool
Yeah, it was
community,
really
good coaches.
So, yeah, that part was really cool.
Yeah, I was really...
So during the seminar too, I started to talk about programming. So, like assessing, coaching, programming. And the subject came about on programming, about the hundreds, the 50s and the fives, which I think we talked about a little bit on the podcast, but I want to actually establish what those are. We are talking about your progress, right? And we made a video yesterday about how much muscle she's carrying, how lean she is, and some of it is the fasting and the protocol, but the other side of that is the training.
Yeah.
And she's training so you have to understand also why she's so lean. She's training 3 to 4 times a day, right? So, and not like 3 metcons a day, 3 sessions a day. Each session usually is 2 metcons, like 2 imams of 20 minutes, stuff like that. So it's a lot of training. So how can Janina recover from such a high volume? And it's a very important part. We're going to talk about that recovery, either from volume of training or intensity. Like, how do I recover from doing strongman so heavy on my back and everything? And that's going to be the point of the 100. So the 100, if we look at the performance block, we have skill, muscle capacity, neural output. So what we call the 100 is the part about skill. Next week we'll do the 50s, muscle capacity. The week after that, we'll do neural output, the 5s. So for now, we're going to focus on the 100s. The 100s is skill. Why do I mean by skill? Creating tension in the right places.
Right.
For example, we can talk about that through mobility. What is mobility? It's range of motion under tension. So it's learning to put the right tension, obviously, right, throughout a certain range of motion. So you have 2 ways of establishing mobility or losing mobility. Is you keep the tension the same, which means the weight the same, and you increase the range of motion, or you're going to keep the range of motion the same but increase tension, so by increasing the weight, and therefore lose mobility. So that's what you'll see on a deadlift. Eventually your hammies can't take it if you lift off the floor as the weight goes up. Right, so then you start to hitch or do things like that. So that means that in order to work on mobility or things like that, creating tension in the right places through a certain range of motion or weight is everything. That's the foundation of strength. And what we're going to see is that, so there's the creating the right tension. So let's start with that. If I go too heavy, it's going to be hard to do, right? Because whenever I want to create tension in the right places, that means that I need to focus not so much on the movement, but on how it feels to make sure I'm going to target the right areas. Because a very important part about the 100s, and we're going to talk about that some more, since it's going to be active rest on one side and creating the right tension on the other. That's the point of skill, is that we're mostly going to target the muscle we're not good at. You have to know that the 100s on one side is recovery through blood flow and finding the right tension in the right places. Again, something you lost by doing too much of the 50s and the 5s, right? Which is normal, that's what happens. If you go into the 5s, let's say you do 5 sets of 1 at 95% or whatever, form is going to break down. That's just what happens. You break down form. What does that mean? That means that the tension is not going in the right places because the weight is so heavy. Imbalances start to show, which is completely normal. That's what happens. I'm not saying you shouldn't. That's what's going to happen.
It's not all going to be pretty.
But it can't be at 95%, your form breaks down. That's just the way it is. And that's okay. That's the purpose of the 5s, is to fight through that.
And also to see your imbalances, that you can take it to the
exactly.
100s.
Right. And so, progress, but right? Understand that means because the 5s are all exploitation, I don't want you to think about which muscle to use when you're doing a max weight on the back squat. I want you to squat the weight. Don't think, do. Like there's a moment, like when you're on the super heavy yoke carry, don't think about whether your hammies are engaging or not. This is too late. This is not the moment to think about that. Right now, the moment is getting into that murderous rage that you need to lift such a heavy weight for reps or distance. So at that moment, you're going to be all exploitation. I want you to do. Forget thinking, forget finding the stuff. That is not the moment. The moment to think about where the tension is being applied and if it's correct or not is during the 100s. Right. So why do we call it the 100s? Because it's your typical, what we see on bodybuilders, like the 5 sets of 20. 6 sets of 15-ish, you get the idea. 4 sets of 25, whatever. Right. We call it the 100s because the point here is high volume, high reps, massive blood flow in the right places.
Is that then, for example, also a long imam?
It could be if I do like imams with a sled sprint or things like this. But the point of the 100s is we can do it with conditioning, no question. Like I can do like let's say sled sprints, long sled sprints like the 200 meter stuff like that. But you have to understand something. Even though it can be done through conditioning, the point of the 100s is to find the right tension in the right places, and to create a blood flow that we can use it as active recovery, and again, like making up for the damage of the fives.
Right.
So Thanos was right, energy is finite. No idea still. Huh? God, I'm working on it. Anyway, you understand.
I watched a movie the other day.
You watched a movie the other day.
Yeah.
Right. So progress. She watched a movie the other day. There you go.
At one piece.
And almost. Only had one break.
Exactly.
It's progress. Anyway, Thanos was right. Energy is finite. So we can't just do the hundreds and do all muscles. Honestly, what I want you to focus on the hundreds is the muscles that don't want to respond to the weight correctly, if that makes sense, which is why I need you to be on the exploration side, because it's going to be hard to find that tension and keep it proper, correct, especially on that fourth and fifth set of 20 reps. So what we do is we go to the global gym. I choose, for example, my hammies, stuff like that. We do 5 sets of 20, and then I go, she goes. So we have 60-second rest, max, then we go back and forth. By the fourth set, I can barely bend my legs on the hammies, but I want to default to my outside hammy. And this is where I actually fight to keep the weight properly on the inside hammy where I want it for that exercise.
So you would really say like the hundreds is best in a bodybuilding session.
Right, so that's why I
right?
think it's best in a bodybuilding format of high volume, high blood flow type. So either that or on the sled. That works as well. But if you do it on the sled, let's say sprints or back, is because, for example, you want to find your glutes and VMO, whatever, up to you, but I'm just saying.
Or doing a press on the sled, is that
if it's light enough, just so you can find the pecs, for example. Like I like the sled press, I like it a lot. I use it in my 50s in the form of imams,
I prefer 50s.
which is where, so what we're going to talk about this is you're going to see is some exercise belong in the hundreds, some exercise belong in the 50s, some exercise belong in the fives. Who decides? You do. It's because each
Who should
phase,
know? You.
right? Well, each phase is going to have its
Right.
intent. So you need to understand the intent of each phase to get the most out of it. But again, the intent of the main intent of the 100 is what? Is again, out of the fives, things moved. Tension was created in places where you're naturally stronger and less where you're naturally weak, which is normal. Your imbalances are showing. Completely fine. That's what we need to do because it was all exploitation. But now we need to come back from that. So the 100 is going to allow us, first of all, that blood flow that we need, right? Because we got beaten up by the session of the fives because it was so heavy. Then it allows us to go like, all right, when I do this, I shift this way or do that way. Let me find the correct tension in the right places. Yeah. It's easier to do on a 20 rep set than on a 10 rep set.
You should go like, not there, yes,
right, not there. And on top of it, you don't have to brace nearly as much. If you look at the fives, you have to brace like crazy. So you can suddenly, like your capacity for movement is not less, but it's a different one, right? Same thing if you do a set of 10, you have to brace a certain way. At 20, you don't need to. You can find it, like let's say just my low abs and do bicep curls. That's not a problem. If I were to do heavy, I would have to brace differently. Right. And it changes the format if that happens to be my imbalance. Right. So for the hundreds, I want more or less 5 sets of 20, 6 sets of 15 to get to that massive pump and to exhaust the muscle, right? When I mean the muscle, you're gonna have to, again to find out what is it that you need. Like for me, it's the hammy, especially the inside hammy. Right. It's the outside hammy. I have a problem with external torque on the left, so I work that on the 50s. But on the 100s, for example, internal torque on the right, stuff like that, and just my hammies that won't grow. We go to the global gym and then we do leg curls, 5 sets of 20. Then we do a standing leg curl, a pump sesh, 5 sets of 20. Then I do a seated leg curl, 5 sets of 20. Then I do my skinny calves, and then we do like. But I'll do the muscle that need the most work in the hundreds. Yeah. So for me, it's hammies, calves. So let's give an example. That way it's easier to be practical. For me, it's going to be, so the hammies, but it's going to be the glutes, right? So we do glutes because I need external torque on the left, but I need internal torque on the right. So I need to do the glute major. So I do those butt exercises, you see those fitness model do, like, kicking the foot back, or the thing with the lever, which actually works really well for the glutes. We do adductor and abductor machines.
Oh, that one.
I do some abs, right, just to get like an oblique opener, but with weight in a way. Like I like to do, even though I do the oblique opener on the side, it's just a cool way to move the spine a little bit. And again, I do sets of 25, so there's no stress on the spine, but it's also nice to, like flex and extend the spine a little bit under control with the blood flow. So there's a good example of the hundreds. Is I don't want you to ever flex and extend the spine under heavy load. That is just a bad idea. But so that's why the deadlift is always going to be about bracing in a way that your spine cannot move. That's the 50s and the 5s. Always, because you're at risk. That doesn't mean I never want you to flex and extend your spine. So the hundreds would be a perfect way to do that. So you can do it in many different ways. There's Jefferson curl, stuff like that. I like to just take those machines for the abs, extend fully, contract fully, and then move my spine that way and make my low ab work a little bit extra, stuff like that, with a nice pump and a good movement form.
Yeah.
That's the right place for that is the hundreds. I do some activation of the tricep, like the inside head, right here by the elbow. That's actually very, very helpful to lock out weight. So I do a massive pump session for this. Usually that means I do supinated one arm tricep extension, because it allows me to hit that part of the tricep right by the elbow, which is the part that I need for my dumbbell press. So there's a place for that. Biceps, also I do it in certain forms in the hundreds. Upper pec usually is a 50. So I have specific muscles that require much more precise work, almost isolation style, not quite, but more toward the isolation, so more toward the exploration, because I have a harder time finding them. And that's what I use the hundreds for. The good news about that is there's so much blood flow getting created that you get an active rest session out of it.
Yeah, so how do you feel afterwards? Do you get sore? How do you feel the rest of the day?
So
which moment of the week do you like to do it? On which day?
So I do that as an active rest. So usually I do it after a hard training session. So either the 5s or if I did the 50s and an imam, stuff like that, and I feel beat up. I go there because I feel so much looser from the pump after the session of hundreds. The key for me also is like I put no emotional connection into that workout. I'm there to do work. I do my 5 sets of 20. I get a pump, but there's really I do very little visualization, there's very little emotional investment for me to do a bodybuilding session. And it's very important for me because I get exhausted otherwise. If I invest myself emotionally in bodybuilding, I get 3 weeks and I'm shot. I can invest myself emotionally tremendously on strongman, less on powerlifting, a lot less on bodybuilding. So this will also define if I use the 100, the 50s, and the 5s. I know like I'm getting into more complex ideas, but there's also that. For me to have a completely like no emotional investment type session, the best place is to do it when I'm beat up from a session of the 5s and I feel drained emotionally because I put so much into the session. Then the next day, because you still have to move because it's better, I go to the global gym and then I just get a pump everywhere. But again, in specific muscles, because that way I can get all that together. I can get a emotional recovery session out of it. I can get a physical active recovery session, a great pump, and I get to get the muscles that don't want to react, to connect again, and I get an exploration type session. So the bodybuilding is perfect.
So if I hear you correctly, you sort of reconnect with the body again.
Right.
In that sense.
And especially specific muscles. I cannot explain like you need to do this. You need to do your active recovery. Like I feel the best way to do it is that through a pump session. There's other ways, but I think one of the biggest thing people miss for recovery is that aspect. I've seen many people taking 3 days off instead of 1 day of active recovery in the gym. I swear, maybe not 3-1, but it's a 2-1. You'll need 2 days off to do the same thing one active recovery will do. And sometimes I'll go to the global gym and when I say 5 sets of 20, some days will be very light.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
some days will be
You
heavier.
don't want to get sore out of it. You don't want to.
I just don't want to push.
Yeah.
Not like that. And so depending on how I feel, some bodybuilding session I'll go a little bit heavier and go get that pump, go get that stretch, go get that hypertrophy. Most of the time it's moving. Like especially if I had a hard training session or a hard week, I go there with no emotional investment. I just do the work. There's something to be said about that. So I do the work, but that doesn't mean I'm not in exploration. So I'm not emotionally invested, but that doesn't mean I don't pay attention to what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I'm not just moving, I'm just doing the work. That doesn't mean I'm just moving. That's not true. I'm still going to stretch, contract. I'm going to pay attention that the right muscles are being used with the right tension. I can work on mobility. I can work on a lot of stuff. Just because I'm not emotionally invested does not mean I'm not paying attention. On the contrary, I'm all in exploration. I'm feeling the muscle work. I'm just not attaching an emotional value to it. Like for example, like a sense of self-identity type of thing. When I do a heavy yoke carry, it goes to the core of who I am. Because I want to be, it's either the weight wins or I do. Like there is a definite notion of winning versus losing in the fights for me. It's like, all right, well, let's see who's going to come out on top here. Is it me or the yoke? And it's not going to be the yoke. And so I go into it with intent. This is why I did the 1,000-pound yoke carry, feeling my femurs bending, and kept on going. Not a good idea, but I kept on going because that's the emotional investment I put into those types of things. This is who I am. I am the person who carries, type of stuff like that. I cannot do that with bodybuilding. Pro bodybuilders do it, and that's why they are pro bodybuilders. I cannot. Like it just drains me out of oblivion. So
right.
For me, it's very important to see that session as a do the work correctly. Don't get invested emotionally. Again, that does not mean I'm not paying attention to what I do. There's a difference there, right? I'm actually more precise into those sessions because I have to make sure the tension is in the right places. I'm just not, my sense of identity is not involved in that session, which is an active recovery on that as well, so that I can keep on moving without being drained by it, which actually gives me energy back for my big session.
Right.
So that's very important. And I think too many people skip that part, the active recovery. They much rather do nothing than go to the gym. But I think it's because the gym is always emotionally charged and there's only so many times you can do that. So it's good also to see the gym as a place where where your sense of identity is not being challenged constantly. It will be on certain things, but there are sessions where it's not. So maybe for you it's running for 30 minutes or going on the airline or whatever. But those sessions are very important. And if you're going to have 2 days off, then 1 day should be active recovery. Then you take a day off, then you come back to the gym.
Right.
But I think active recovery is so much more beneficial than days off. So I'm much rather you go to the gym and move that you don't. As long as you don't involve yourself, you don't invest emotionally into that session.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important part of this.
So if someone does go to the gym, to the bodybuilders, to the hundreds,
Mm-hmm.
and they find themselves emotionally invested, what would you say? Like just
Right.
how do you have that, not disconnect, but how do you not bring any emotion into that session?
That's going to require a little bit of work. Most of the time that emotional charge that you put into it relates to your sense of identity. Then are you going to the gym to look a certain way? Because maybe for example, if I look at me, my thing is lifting heavy, right? Mm-hmm. Especially strong and heavy. That's what I like, right? So I made a choice that's where my emotional investment will be.
Right.
But if I try to do that and put emotional investment in powerlifting and put emotional investment in conditioning and put emotional investment in how I look, I'm screwed. Like you have to understand, everything is a 1, 2, 3, right? If you look exploration to exploitation, if you look at strength, if you look at 5s to 100, everything is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Skill, muscle capacity, neural output, everything is 1, 2, 3. So if you're going to put a 3 of anything constantly, you're going to crash. Mm-hmm. So you have to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You even see that in powerlifting when they have a light day, a medium day, and a heavy day. There's a rotation there that is always required. I think we should have that rotation toward our goals and toward how we feel, as well as light, medium, heavy, or light conditioning versus heavy singles or stuff like that. There's a rotation there. You cannot be at a 3, so max emotional investment on how you look, how you perform, how strong you are. It's just not going to work. And that's, I think, a mistake people make. Like they go like, I want to look a certain way and be a top strongman. If I want to be a top strongman, my waist is going to be thicker. That's just the way it is. I can be lean, but I'm not going to look like a pro bodybuilder. Turns out I'm never going to look like a pro bodybuilder because I would need to train a way where every session is emotionally charged because I would value that. And turns out I don't, or at least inside it doesn't make me happy. Yeah. It just makes me super obsessive about what about this, what about that, and I don't like it. I don't do well with that.
Yeah. I can't
it's just
look
not
at
me.
it like that.
I'll be crazy. I'll start doing drugs because I want to be leaner. I want to be bigger. And then my brother being an addict and my father an alcoholic, that is not a game I'm playing.
Exactly.
Right. I come from a family of people that have abused substances. I don't think it's in me, but I'm not going to play with it either. It's like I could see myself being so obsessed by how big or lean I am that I go heavily into steroids. I could totally see myself do that, and I'm not doing it because I don't want to die at 50.
No, I don't want you to die at 50.
That's pretty close. So exactly.
I'm intending to keep you around a little bit longer.
Right. So, for example, I can do strongman heavy and not be tempted by drugs. Bodybuilding is a different ballgame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you would do. Now I'm saying as an idea, you would do it would be as to recover better, to be stronger, not to look a certain way, but to perform.
Yeah,
from that in-state.
Right.
You
no,
do
don't get me wrong.
Right?
I want to look good like everybody else,
No,
and then I'm not judging that. But I just can't think of it that way.
Exactly, I have the same
I can't
thing.
train to look good. It just drives me crazy. So if I train well and I look good, I'm double happy. Don't get me wrong. Like everybody else, I'm as vain as everybody else. I want to look good in the mirror, but I can't train for that.
Yeah.
So that emotional investment cannot be there. And call it emotional investment, call it goals, call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter, right? You get the idea. My intent is for heavy strongmen. And then powerlifting, I use as a tool for assistance work and conditioning, right? When I go do bodybuilding, I'm doing work. I'm doing, what do I need? Those are the muscles that need to get a pump through. That's the connection I need to find, and I'm going to go find that. But that's the reason I'm doing it, not to, otherwise it screws me up completely. Right. So that's the hundreds, right? But as an active recovery day, it's perfect, as much physically as mentally. So I love the hundreds now. I love the 100, not for the hundreds, because going to the gym and doing 5 sets of 20 is the most boring shit ever. But that's okay because I don't think about it anymore because I like what it gives me, which is the capacity to go heavier on everything else. I've been doing really good lately, and then I'm back to like a 165 power squat. Right. I did it last night. 1, 2, 3 back up, which is far from my 230 obviously, but that's progress because I was at 140, now I'm at 160, so it's progress. But also when I did the 230, I weighed 110 kilos. I'm at 100 right now. I'm 101, 102, something like that. So I'm much, much lighter. And the weights are starting to go up again and it feels good and everything. And that's, like 8 years later. So those are very promising progress, right? Exactly. But there is no question that those sessions of hundreds have helped tremendously from that, mentally and physically. So I won't, it is a part of the work that cannot be, that is very underrated, but that should not be understated and underused. Right. You see Rich Froning was doing a bodybuilding session, you see Tia Toomey doing it, Matt Frazier was doing something, there is a place for that. You don't have to do it, again, with emotional investment like that, but that doesn't mean you get to do it without paying attention either. People go there, they're almost shamed by the idea of doing assistance work because Dave Castro made fun of that and CrossFit in general makes fun of that for years. Turns out there's a place for it. Right. And a very important part for it. So I can't put it in the conditioning template because there's only so much word I can put on a piece of paper. Because
I disagree.
Yeah, there's already 6 days with 2 imams a day. So, but that being said, you have to understand, Janina does 2 sessions of hundreds a week.
So yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, exactly.
And once in a while more than that, because once in a while you do long imams.
Yeah, what I like is talking about that intent. I don't like to look at training for an appearance perspective. I like to move a certain way, to be well conditioned and to be strong, right? And to move well. And I can only look at it from that perspective. So for me, it's exactly the same thing. The pump session helps me put everything in place so I can use it when I need to.
Yep.
If I have a small pain, especially for example my traps, lat pull downs. It helps so much better than anything else. Just that. Putting everything in the right places. It's like you said, I really do not like it because it's just really, really boring, honestly.
It is.
And it's not the most uplifting session. It's quite boring and it's quite bland.
Good.
Which is good.
Because you can take a break from always being
exactly. Exactly. That's also why I like the long imams. Like I do a lot of just really boring long imams. Sometimes it's like a 30-minute run, just a run. Like I think those are really like one of the most important sessions as well.
Right. So let's talk about how you adapt that, because we're going to talk about how should you do the 100s. Should it be in the same session as the 5 and the 50? Should it be in cycles?
Oh, right,
should you have just sessions of that? Because that's a very important part as well, right? So I'll go into that, but first let's talk about how you adapt. Do you put the 100s within your CrossFit sessions, or do you have separate sessions for that?
I never combine them.
You never combine them?
Never.
Yeah.
No, never.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Because I need to be not in that CrossFit mindset, because I need to get out of it. Usually I even like to go to a random gym to do the pump session, or at home or something.
A different place, right?
A different place. Because it's just not the same mindset. When I go to I also prefer to go to the CrossFit gym because I like to come and just fuck shit up and then leave. But that's not the pump session.
That's
the pump session is like, which album haven't I listened to? Should I listen to a podcast while I do this? Or we talk, and it's like, it's just relaxed, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a completely different idea. Yeah, so we like to go, we have the gym downstairs, but I use it for my 50s. Usually a pump session like that. So you do about 2 pump sessions a week?
Right.
But you also do the long runs.
Yeah, as well.
So overall, how many sessions of 100s do you do per week? About 4 or 5?
4 at least, yeah. Because I do usually like a long run, and then I do some type of really long imam, like a 40-minute stuff where I just do like
right, so that's about 5, right? So that
4 or 5.
Because you train six times a week, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So out of 18 sessions, 5 of those are 100s.
Right.
That's a lot.
Right.
Just to give you,
so you guys,
it's almost a third.
As a mental recovery thing, because it's like when I go for that 30-minute run, there's literally nothing to get out of it. It's just moving my feet, and usually I really like to focus on breathing, and so
exploration.
Really, just that. Feeling the tension in the right places, feeling the inner hem, feeling the low abs, being upright. And usually I start that session in a very different mindset than when I come back. When I come back, it's almost like meditating or stretching as a mindset. You know what I mean?
Right, but that's very important because, again, you're going to run 30 minutes, for example, you're going to pay attention to the tension in your feet and your breathing. So Janina is paying a lot of attention to how she runs. That does not mean it's the type of focus, it's a different type of focus that she puts in her CrossFit sessions.
Yeah.
That's very, very important because I call it emotional investment, but whatever, it's a different focus where the focus is not on running faster, it's not on winning any competition anytime soon. It's an inward look. How do I feel running? What is my breathing? This is not the place for you to go ballistic, to go anal about like, oh, I need to do like 32 minutes and 6K or whatever. It's a place where you just let go and do the work. But just because you let go does not mean you get to do it incorrectly.
And for me, I know that I need it when I think I need to run a 5K. Let me see a route that I can run a 5K in this time. And then I know like, okay, we're absolutely not going to do that.
Yes.
We're going to nasal breathe, and we're going to just focus on the breathing and the right
no data.
No data. Leave your phone at home.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
If I think like that, then I go do that. The opposite. It's
right,
the same thing as a bodybuilding session. If I'm like, I'm going to like lift a heavy deadlift today, I'm like, no, bodybuilding session.
Yeah. Right. So and when we go to a global gym, there's no phone, by the way.
Yeah.
We both leave our phone, so we talk to each other. And that way there's no pressure. I'm not trying to get in the zone.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to feel my muscle working. And
That's
some
why
days it's very light.
If I do it alone, I listen to a podcast or something like super like.
And again, like if I do leg
casual.
curls, some days we use the same weight. I don't care. I'm doing 5 sets of 20. I'm squeezing the muscle. I'm stretching it. I'm squeezing it. 5 sets of 20, same weight. I do not care. That does not mean I don't do it correctly.
Right.
And that's your session of 100. So out of 20 sessions a week, about 5 of them are hundreds, right? So we're going to go back to a 3-2-1 system. For me, for example, out of 6 sessions a week, 3 will be pump sessions, 2 50s, 1 5s, about. I have 2 to 3 pump sessions like that because especially when I go heavy, like on a monster dumbbell or stuff like that, things move. And I can't do a heavy pressing session and a heavy squat sometime in the same week. If I do that, maybe I do it for 2-3 weeks, but then I get wrecked. So let's talk about that from a programming perspective. We put it in the week, but different training sessions that the 50s and the 5s. When I do the 50s, I do the 50s. When I do the 5s, I do the 5s. I very rarely mix any of those 3 together. I think it's better to do a session of hundreds because there's an intent to it. Right. How are you going to work on active recovery if you're doing conditioning at the same time? Yeah. It's feasible, but it's hard. So you would think like
because you have to have you have to switch so much
the mindset.
And usually, if I train after the bodybuilding session, I just do something like what I have to do, and then I go back later on, but
with a different mindset.
Yeah, but like at least 2-3 hours in between, like not straight. It's just the switch is just almost painful.
Right.
It's just
so
way too
some people can do it. For example, old school bodybuilding, a leg session would be set of 5s, max set of weight for a set of 5 on the back squat. Then they would move. So that's the neural output, the 5s. Then they move to leg press for 5 sets of 15, that's your muscle capacity, the 50s. Then they would move to 5 sets of 20-25 reps on the leg extension, that's your hundreds. Right. So they would do 5 to 50s to hundreds in a session. With the right, I can't do it with the right mindset.
No, me neither. But
maybe they can, but I can't.
That would mean that either the 100 to 50s and the 5 all have the different mindset, they can switch really fast from mindset. Which
they can, because they're pro bodybuilders, so can do it. But even if you see, you also have to be careful with the pro bodybuilding things. You have to understand that a lot of time the phases they're in is decided not from a competition perspective, but from a compound perspective.
But it's also like, sorry to interrupt
you. No, someone said that you interrupt me too much. Yeah, remember?
That's true. I actually like.
No, we said that about me too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Married life. What do you want?
Yeah, it's also because I usually know what you're gonna say, so I'm like.
We are one person.
Who needs him
Who needs to hear it? I know what he's going to say.
Yeah. But what was I going to say?
There you go. That's what. See, I win. So, as I was saying, we are talking about, like they can put it in the same session. So, but if you
the drugs level them out either as well. That's what I was.
Well, there's another thing. If you look at, for example, like the linear progression, and you look at a Hatfield. Dr. Hatfield linear progression, he starts with assistance work, so the hundreds, move to the 50s, move in the 5s. This is most macro cycle you'll see in a linear progression. 12 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, what you will see is you will see a phase of hundreds into a phase of hypertrophy, so assistance work into hypertrophy into neural output. So hundreds into 50s into 5s. But what most people don't understand about those phases is each has its own compound. Like by that I mean each has its own steroids.
Right.
They are not the same. If you go in the hundreds, massive pump and stuff like that, it's a very specific type of steroid versus when you get to the 5s. For example, like people take tren because it doesn't aromatize. It allows them to gain muscle and not water because there's no estrogen conversion, so there's no fat and water gain, so they can stay with a very lean body mass. So that would be great for a bodybuilder who is prior to a competition who wants to keep his size while he's dieting and bring out the details. So I can do much lighter work, take tren, and get all the details out and stay very lean and hard. But if I want to, I'm a strong man who goes into a position without a a weight class and I'm trying to get as big as I can, then I want water retention. I want the fat gain and everything because I'm trying to get big. Train is not the point. They're going to take train, but they're also going to take something like Anadrol. Anadrol, you can gain like 10 kilos in 3 weeks.
Right.
Like it's good. That's why their face is all bloated usually like that. Is some shit like Anadrol makes you hold a shit ton of water, but that's what you want because with water you get stronger.
So from a programming perspective, you think you need, for a balanced programming perspective, right, not working up to a competition, you need the 100s, the 50s, and the 5s
during the week in separate sessions. If you start to go towards steroids or competition, it's a different ballgame. So what I would do for a competition, if you don't take steroids, is I would still do it, but I would do more 100s toward more 50s, toward more 5s as I get closer to the competition. Right. So I would, and toward the end of the competition, I would use the 100s to balance out the 5s. And then the 50s are out. Yeah. So there would be more 50s at the beginning because it'd be more conditioning, more hypertrophy, less of it at the end, but the 100s would go up and take the place of the 50s to counteract the damage of the 5s. Yeah. That's what I would do, unless I'm on drugs, and then you can recover much better on drugs, so I have to do less 100s. Right. So I can do more 50s if I'm on drugs to get the hypertrophy that I need. Screw active recovery because I'm just going to take more steroids and recover faster from that aspect. Right. And then I just can pound the 5s. Right. A little bit of 100s to make sure like my joints are still connected, but I don't have to do as much because the recovery is being taken care of by the steroids, which is a very important part of all this as well. Not judging. Personally, I'm not doing it because health. Otherwise, I would be, by the way, if you tell me I could be 110 kilos, like 10 kilos heavier than this, leaner than this, twice as strong, without the side effects, I'd be like, yeah. Right. I just don't want the side effects. Exactly. I have other things to take care of. We're going to have a baby next year. I don't think I can have a baby on those types of drugs anyway, right? And I want to be around for when the kid grows up. So I've seen, do you know that this year there's 35 bodybuilders that have died in 2022? Well,
yeah, but
29 of them were under the age of 55, I think.
Yeah.
6 were over old school bodybuilders that were like over the age of 60. I think the oldest that died this year that was a pro was John Meadows, who was 52 at the time, I think. They all died in their late 40s, in their 40s, early to late, and some even in their 30s. That's some scary shit. Like there is like the whole like taking as much steroids as humanly possible exploration phase bullshit justification that has been happening in the last 10, 15 years is starting to show. Let's put it this way.
It's seriously unhealthy.
So like, I'm not condoning the usage of steroids. What I'm saying is get a doctor, do it correctly.
But sorry, this is a completely different question. Is like, do you think that's why the Disney December also worked so well?
Yes, totally. Because it was a full exploration phase on the parasympathetic side that allow you also to take the focus out of objectives into constraints and just looking inward in a calm way. This is why also it can crash people, because you can easily take that idea and invest too much emotionally into it because it makes you feel better. Right. So you start at it, which is a completely different session where suddenly it's not about objectives, it's not about that emotionally charged, I want to look better or whatever, and you cut out everything and you just run nasal breathing for 30 minutes. I was even timing my steps to my breathing when I was running just to get into a flow state.
That's so cool.
And so you feel so much better. Right. So much better means you start to invest emotionally into it because it's working. It's giving you results. And before you know it, you're putting so much charge into it that is becoming exactly what you try to get away from. So you can easily fuck it up and crash yourself. Right. And some people also
of the exploration
of too much exploration. The problem too is that people were going so much into exploration on a system that was not ready for that. So you collapse no matter what, you collapse the arch, you're screwed.
Right.
So Disney December was great, but it has to be balanced by the other one. So if you do too much of the 100s for the 50s and the 5s, you'll end up in the wrong place as well, because eventually you'll start to put the wrong intent into the 100s and now you're going backwards. Yeah. The 100s have a very specific intent for it. So the way we program it is for active recovery, tension, so skill, putting the right tension in the right places, right, with a very low emotional charge. You see it in my template, you don't see it in Janina's template but as she said, it's 25% of her work. So maybe I can put it as an addendum in the conditioning template. The problem is, now that this is out, maybe I can do it now, because before I know if I program assistance work, it's either people would have been bored out of their mind doing it and not do it, or they would take it as a conditioning, as a CrossFit template, and then crash themselves. So sometimes you got to do stuff that is boring that you don't especially like to do. That doesn't mean you get to do it incorrectly, though. Sometimes you got to do work too.
Yeah, or we just add it at the as like a topping.
That's what it is. But it's a very important topping. It's having barbecued meat without salt.
Yeah.
The salt doesn't make the meat, but who wants to barbecue meat without salt?
Right.
Right, that's your active recovery. You need it. I'm not saying it's the whole main dish. Is it boring? Yeah. So we do it, we talk, and just don't think about it. But think about what you're doing. There's a fine line for you right there, to think about what you're doing without thinking about it. It cannot be emotionally charged either. But if you do it correctly, you get so much out of it. So enjoy the process for what it brings you. Sometimes it means that the session itself will be boring as well, but what you get out of it will make you excited that you're doing it, even though doing it is boring as hell.
Yeah. And do you also take like you talked about the imbalances and how you take them into it. Do you target the muscle that hurts, or do you target the muscle that you needed to
No, the ones that I need, that are just not connecting. My hammies, for example.
Right.
Glutes, because the right glute med is always like this, so I know I need the right glute major, so I target that. So both. Some because I know I need to balance certain things, others because otherwise they don't progress. My hammies don't go anywhere if I don't have at least one session of 50s on it, one session of 5s, and kind of 2 sessions of 100s. I need my hammies to work throughout the 150s and 5s 3 times a week, at least, probably 4. Yeah. 4, I start to make progress. Below that, I'm barely hanging on. At 2, it's kind of going backwards.
So they need a lot of volume.
They need a lot of work. It's like my biceps, man. It needs so much work. So I need to do 5s in a chin-up, like compound movement for the biceps.
Do you want to mention that a bit?
No, it'll be another podcast on that. How to get biceps. Yeah.
Well,
I'll explain how to get biceps through
really,
5s, 50s, and 100s as well. Yeah. Like how to approach that. You could even do it in the same session. In that particular case, if you have a lagging body part like the biceps, but then I'll make a stupid podcast on that.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea.
I mean? Because it's a very specific thing. Like how do you get biceps, or how do you get hammies if they just don't want to respond like me? And you want to listen to me on that, because I don't have hammies, I don't have biceps. So I'm the one you want to talk to, because I'm the one who has to figure shit out to get them going. Don't talk to the guy who naturally has huge hammies and huge biceps. He doesn't have to do anything. Don't take advice for how to build your back from me, because I can do anything and my back blows up. So it's easy. I'll tell you, do teres major, so lat pull downs, and then latissimus dorsi, you do dumbbell rows, and then maybe some T-bar rows. Barbell rows are very good.
Yeah, Julian has the craziest lats. I don't have lats.
Right, so
he tells me, just do lat
pull downs. Just do that. And I'm working at her going like, why are you not doing your lat pull downs? She's like, I am. It's like, well, no, teres major. It's like, because I do 2 sessions and they're like this. And so
I need a lot of work on the lats.
Right, so she's going to be a lot better at explaining to you how to get lats than I am. Because for me, I'm going to give you a list of exercise to do. You're going to go, how many reps? I go, like around 10, and I do 2 sets, but I kind of feel a difference. Yeah. That's good, get a massive pump.
No, and that's it. How does that feel? Because I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Me, it took me 3 months to know where what lats are. I didn't know. I didn't know what.
You know what? It took me 3 months to know what biceps are.
So it's.
But by the way, there's a relationship there. Lats versus biceps. You either have great biceps or great lats. Very rarely do you get 2. 2, it means you're Ronnie Coleman. Most of the time, it doesn't happen like that.
Right.
Yeah, most people, it's either lats or bicep. Choose one. Because, and we'll talk about this, is the way you do chin-ups, for example. We either target the biceps or they target the lats, but you're not going to target both. So I target all lats, no biceps, no shit. You target all biceps, no lats. Right.
Or my straps are a problem.
Well, yeah, because that's what happens if you go toward the biceps. Anyway, we'll do a podcast on that. But I wanted to do this podcast about the intent of the 100s.
And from a mental perspective, because I feel like the 100s calm me down. Like they make me be able to recover so much better to do the fives. Do you feel like that as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, this is the
Because give you
point of the hundreds.
stability in your baseline where you just are lower, so you can go higher, but you can also be in the
This
center.
is the base of the pyramid. It's a pyramid in itself. The 100, the 50s, and the 5s are a pyramid. The base of the pyramid on that particular one are the hundreds because they allow you to do the 50s and the 5s. 3 to 1 for me. 3 sessions to 2 sessions to 1 session. It's a pyramid of its own. Cool. Next week, we'll go about the 50s because this is where progress is made for me, is in the 50s. But the hundreds set up the 50s.
So which one is your, if you have to pick one favorite? For me, I love the 50s.
5s.
Yeah, I
Heavy
love
strongman.
the 50s.
Heavy strongman, not even close.
For me, it's
This is where I'm
definitely
alive.
the 50s.
50s is where I make progress. I fucking hate them, but that's where I make progress. But I live to lift heavy strongman shit. Not static. I live for strength athleticism. You give me a heavy dumbbell, I have to jump under, and it's scary as fuck because it's so heavy. I live for those moments. It scared the living shit out of me to go under a heavy yoke or stuff like that. And that's why I love it so much, because then it's like it's you or me, bitch. It's not going to be me.
Yeah.
I love for those moments. Static, a squat up and down, I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I use the 50s more for that. We'll go over all that next week.
For me, it's the 50s, man.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.